public comments. Do we have any public comments this evening? Okay. Up is Chief Stowers and the fire department.
So tonight we're pinning some new firefighters or newer firefighters and some newer captains. The pinning is kind of a long tradition in the fire service. They work very, very hard. Probationary firefighters work very, very hard. They get their probationary period with training with their shift and also at the academy over in Stowe. And 3 of these guys just graduated back in November, and they served. They made Maynard very, very proud. Alex Martinek was actually the Outstanding Student Award winner over there at his recruit class. So they work very, very hard. The captains, it's a big transition for captains coming from a firefighter to running a shift. And in normal organizations, they might just have to run their shift or they might just run their crew, but with us, they have extra responsibility, so it makes it a little bit more difficult. And all of them have worked very, very hard, and I'm very, very proud of them. And tonight, family members are going to pin their badges on them to make them official members of the fire department. So first we have Captain King, who's going to be pinned by his wife, Kelly.
Can you pretend to do it again?
Next we have Captain Parr, who's going to be pinned by his wife. And I'd like his dad to come up. Where's his dad? His dad's a retired fire chief from Wakefield. Alex Martinek's up next. He's going to be pinned by his mom. Ed Wasick is next. He's going to be pinned by his brother Mark.
Let me help you out a little bit. Why do you hand him there?
This is payback time.
Or you do.
Will the two brothers do that again and again?
Sure they will.
Yes, we can.
Getting close.
Pretend. Awesome. Thank you.
Last but certainly not least is Brian Kramer, who's going to be pinned by his mom. He's also our tallest firefighter.
Brian, watch out for the TV, buddy.
Thank you.
I think Representative Hogan has some things for the pinnies as well.
For the pennies. And when I have our citations from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts and the House of Representatives, be it hereby known to all that the Massachusetts House congratulates all of you and each of you in recognition of the occasion of the badge pinning ceremony for your promotion to captain and various other positions in the Maynard Fire Department. So we'll start with John. Congratulations.
Thank you reiterate again that I'm very proud of these guys. This is a fine group of people, and they make the town proud.
Congratulations all.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have two sets of minutes to accept. And the first are the minutes of our meeting from May 21st. I make a motion that we move to accept and approve the meeting minutes of May 21st, 2019 as shown. Thank you. Do we have any comments or questions about the minutes of May 21st? All those in favor of accepting? Thank you. The next set of minutes are executive session minutes. And make a motion that we move to approve but not release executive session minutes from Board of Selectmen meeting held May 21st, 2019. Do I have a second? Thank you, Armin. Any questions about those executive session minutes? And they'll be released once the item we discussed has come to conclusion. So, all those in favor? Our correspondence items for the week, there are 11 of them. Make a motion that we move to accept and approve the list of 11 correspondence items A through K as shown. A second.
Second.
Comments on the nothing?
You can't have nothing, it's 11 items, come on.
Yeah.
No. First, I want to wish Tim luck with his endeavors. He is, again, another loss to the facilities department and to the town. And I have confidence that we will obviously move forward, but we do thank him for his service and here in Maynard, because he has worked hard for us.
The complete streets?
Yes. I'm just looking at it though. When are we planning on that starting, the complete streets?
Hopefully by the end of June, early July sometime.
Okay, that's all. Anybody else? Any comments on the correspondence items? All those in favor of accepting the correspondence items? Thank you. Next up is our consent agenda, and it is 3 items as shown. And I make a motion we move to accept and approve the 3 consent items A through C as shown. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Do we have any comments regarding these?
I got no comments, Mr. Chairman, if that's what you're looking for.
A lot of people with reappointments and
Yeah.
appointments.
No
That's
brainer.
great.
No brainer.
Okay, all those in favor? Next up is an interview for a new Conservation Commission member.
John Milhaven?
That is a motion to appoint John Milhaven to the Conservation Commission with a term expiring on June 30th, 2022. And here there's a letter
Hey, you showed up just in time, look at
support from.
You weren't working right now.
that. Yeah.
Support from her.
Did the plane land all right?
It was a close call.
Everyone get their luggage?
Right on time. Okay, so, questions for John?
Have you been involved in the Conservation Committee prior to?
Not the Conservation Committee. I didn't go to the last meeting, and I just came from a site visit on Water Street. But I have not been formally involved until then.
What makes you interested in?
My background, I've always been interested in biology, natural history. I've lived in Maynard since 1996 at several different addresses. Recently, a few years ago, switched careers into teaching, and I just become more sort of a think globally, act locally sort of a mindset. So this just seemed like the right thing to do at this point. I previously worked, I was on the board of directors for the Friends of the Assabet River Refuge for a couple of years. But then I was trying to switch careers from biotech into teaching, and it's a little bit too much. But now the career transition is sort of completed, and I feel ready to step back into some role. So I think it was certain political events at a national level the last couple of years have sort of made me more aware of these things. So.
Well, thank you for your willingness to volunteer.
Oh, no problem.
By the way, I do know there are so many different type of species and trees that you.
Yeah.
Where are those?
Oh, the Japanese knotweed, Oriental bittersweet, glossy buckthorn. They're all in my backyard, actually. Yeah, it's just an interest of mine. I don't know, invasive species. You know, I teach it in high school biology, and it's really convenient to have examples you can point out to students. And a lot of times, they're like, oh, yeah, when you describe knotweed or you show them pictures, they're like, oh, yeah, I see that everywhere. Like, yeah, now that you know what it looks like, you'll see it everywhere. And the glossy buckthorn as well. So.
Any other questions, comments? May come with Caitlin's approval, so.
She even wore
High
her
praise.
vest.
She wore her vest.
I was, you could say invested.
She's been hanging out. That's a Bill Munzer.
Definitely been hanging around with Bill too long.
That's
Oops.
Anyhow, all those in favor of the nomination? Thank you, good luck, and thank you for volunteering.
Oh, thanks.
The slip will be in with the town clerk tomorrow morning.
Okay.
So anytime you can stop by her office to be sworn in.
All right, great. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Johnson, number 7 is the Capital Planning Committee.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman. So, for the charter, that does give guidance and direction for there to be established a capital planning committee, although my understanding is it's been dormant for the past number of years. I'm trying to stand it back up. It would be a good tool for me to have in my development and then recommendations to the board for its budget to include capital planning. Although going into this fiscal year, FY20, capital planning was relatively minimum. We just didn't have a lot of money to use, and I wasn't prepared to go into like bonding and whatnot. So, in this forthcoming year, in preparation for the FY21 budget, I would like the support of a capital planning committee to help me prepare that. Per charter, it's required to submit it submit it as part of the budget, I believe, by the first of the year. the catch is I need people to join. So I put out the sort of like the feelers out there, and I had two gentlemen show interest. Douglas Adler, who's new to town, which I think is preference. It's nice having sort of like new members on the committees and boards. Not required, but it's good to have fresh people. He's just interested, and John Larkin, who I was not familiar with before, but apparently he has been a good resource for the town in the past. So I think those are two good candidates. I just don't have a third, so I need at least a third to get the committee going. I would appreciate that, and that's why I'm coming to you, Mr. Chairman, is to one, see if the board would consider establishing the charge of the plan committee, which is pretty short and sweet. Then secondly, to ask for your recommendations if you have anyone for a third person. I would like to start soon. The sooner I can get a body together and have them meet, the sooner I can kind of get their feet under them. You know, even though they have 6 months technically to get a report, I'm sure that'd go pretty quick.
So by charter, it's 3 to 5 people?
So by charter, it's 3, but in the bylaws, it was updated to 5. I just need 3 for a quorum.
And is there really a vote of the board necessary, given that it is a chartered committee?
No, that's a good point. I just didn't see the charge written in the charter, so just to make sure that the charge matches what your expectations would be. But I mean, you can see I kept it. I just said prepare the plan for the town charter. So I just generally I like to have the charge known so that it's understood what the board expects of whatever body is being established. In this case, it's just. There's not much.
Well, I would imagine that the intent has always been and full disclosure, I sat on the capital planning committee back
Great.
about a dozen years ago.
Yeah.
And years ago? 1,000 years ago? No, a dozen. And the intent at that point, or the charge at that point, and it was difficult because everybody that was on it was a volunteer, and it was difficult to get the
Yes.
people together.
Yes.
And we also didn't have direct access necessarily to the information that was available at the level of the town administrator and
Okay.
everything else. So the intent was always to basically have this group establish the list, quote unquote, the
Okay.
list of capital planning needs, capital needs, and then start prioritizing.
Absolutely.
And that was basically the charge. And then you know, at the time of town meeting, or as we led up to town meeting, that was when we really met more readily and discussed the actual prioritization based on what we had for free cash.
Okay.
And then we took that, and there was no real capital from the perspective of long-term planning. It was really all short-term planning. But I think the intent is long-term planning.
That's my preference. Yes.
So that you have the school buildings in there, and you have the municipal buildings in there, including any future anticipated or desired
That's right.
I think that's buildings.
Yes, that's right.
Long-term.
So,
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
so is the charge the second page of the memo?
No, that's just the excerpt from the charter. So my recommended charge is as simple as prepare an annual capital improvement plan in accordance with the town charter. So then you would have to look at what the charter says. That's why I included it as like an appendix, so to speak. So it's but like I said, I'm not even necessarily asking that you do that now. Even if you can even say you don't need to because it's already described in the charter. I'm just sort of bringing it to you that my hopes is to have to reestablish the capital planning committee. I know it's been something that's been brought up in the past anyways. I'm just telling you that I have worked towards
The
it.
charter does say that it's appointed by the Board of Selectmen.
That's correct.
So therefore, there is a vote to take to appoint members.
That's correct.
But beyond that, you know,
No, it's good. I just don't have I just need a third person, Mr. Chairman.
So we'll put the charge and the other two, these two members and anyone else you get between now and then on the next meeting and vote on them?
I would love to get it by the next meeting. That's the catch. I just need a third person.
I mean, there doesn't seem to be any action to take tonight on it.
Not necessarily. I was just updating the board for.
I know
for
that
the
we
most part.
have talked about it.
I had invited those two gentlemen, but I don't see them. That's all.
No.
In case any of you had questions for them, but you don't have to.
I actually think Mr. Larkin applied for a school committee position last year. I
Okay.
think he was the other candidate. And he had extensive financial information,
Absolutely.
financial background. So I'm actually glad that he's they
At least
expressed an
still
interest,
interest,
'cause
yeah,
absolutely.
No, it is good.
And the spreadsheet that Bob McCarthy refers to frequently relative to the Finance Committee was designed by John Larkin.
Well, that's great, because I just submitted it back to him today, so he'll have it as of December, when we last updated it with, yeah, that's the information I have.
Okay.
And the gentleman I'm going to forward, he's a project manager, so that's what he's.
Excellent.
Okay,
That's it, Mr. Chairman.
thanks. Anybody else have any questions before we move on to the next item? No, the next item is the town clerk's department head presentation.
Do you want the clicker, or do you want, does everybody, did they get pass out or something, because I'm not prepared
They have-
to.
Yeah, we can give you the clicker if you want to click that.
Okay.
Michelle, they have it, they have their
Yeah.
services, so they're looking at it.
Okay. Which one, just the forward one? There we go. Right, thank you. Okay. Okay, Town Clerk's Office, known as the doorway to local government. The Town Clerk's roles include Chief Election Official, Recording Officer, Public Records Officer, Licensing Officer, and Public Information Officer. Over 90% of the activities in the Town Clerk's Office are mandated by law. This includes annual town census, voter registration, vital records, and election procedures, and much more. Larger programs, elections. This was a fairly quiet election year. Next year, not so much. Census, the annual town census, which is mailed out the last week in December every year to approximately 4,661 households. Vital records registration, births, deaths, and marriage license registrations, and issuance of certified copies. Licensing, business, dogs, flammable liquid registrations, raffles, and your local information dispenser. Voter registrations. We have 7,882 registered voters in the town of Maynard. We register voters at the counter, through the mail, RMV, and through the Secretary of State's website. There's voter registrations applied to every election, primary, and town meeting. That's 20 days before each election and primary. Also pertains to an annual town meeting, 10 days before for a special town meeting. Okay, elections governed by federal, state, and local laws. All of my poll workers, my wardens, need to be trained on these machines in order to assist the public when they come to vote. We have the ICP precinct tabulator, which you've seen when you go to vote, and there's also the handicapped assist for anybody that wishes to use it. That one just marks the ballot. It's not an actual voting machine. What is in our custody? Town meeting records, census, street listing, birth, death, marriage certificates, decisions of the Board of Appeals, planning board records and decisions, proprietor records, legal filings, and agreements of the town, and all other public records of the town if no other disposition is appropriate. We issue approximately 50-plus business certificates yearly. All businesses other than individuals, partners, and corporations doing business in their own corporate name must file with the town clerk. We file discontinuances and amendments as well. They're valid for 4 years, and they must be renewed. Filing of utility pole placements goes back to 1911. We file decisions on poles, wires, conduits, gas pipes, plans, condensed returns of utility companies, takings, and land transfers.
Keeper of the town's history from 1871. These are old handwritten registers and tablets. We have some in the vault. I'll be honest with you, I've never really actually looked at them, but it's just all record keeping. Care and preservation of the records. Preparation of the records, storage, binding, and repairing of the books. Adherence to state retention schedules, paper, and computer storage. And these are reviewed a couple times a year to the retention to determine what can be destroyed. Vital records, more than 800 copies per year. We issue marriage licenses to approximately 50 couples a year, and I officiate many of them myself. Cemetery records, deeds to public cemetery lots must be recorded with the town clerk. Private cemeteries, like St. Bridget's, keep their own records. Legal, all lawsuits and claims against the town are filed and served upon the town clerk. Bankruptcies, declaration of trusts, going out of business filings, conflict of interest statements, activities of special municipal employees, contracts, agreements, and deeds. Roads, town and private. In town, we do have recorded acceptances and what streets are unaccepted as well. Who can access our records and files? If it's a public record, anyone is allowed to view. We do have 10 days to respond to a request. If the request is large, it must be in writing, and we'll give an estimate as to the charge prior to the proceeding. If the record is restricted, only those who have legal rights to the record may view it. So essentially, it is if it's a vital record and it's restricted, whoever is listed on the record can only view it. Town clerk swears in all appointed and elected officials and records all individual who were sworn into any position. Appointments, resignations, or removals are also recorded and filed with the town clerk. Variances, permits, decisions, the clerk receives and files and transmits the documents, issues certificates, certified copies of zoning, planning, and district decisions. Clerk signs off on all decisions once the appeal period is over, which is a 20-day appeal period, after which time I can give a letter for approval. Filings, clerk records all rules and regulations of planning board reports as required by law are filed and indexed for retrieval. All meeting notices for all meetings, hearings are clocked and posted and filed. Lawsuits and claims against the town, bankruptcies and declarations of trust, going out of business filings, conflict of interest statements, activities, and special municipal employees. We issue raffle permits to nonprofits, Maynard High being my best customer. Gas permits, flammable liquid renewal permits. This is above ground and underground oil, gasoline, and propane storage. If that is not enough, contracts, bonds, and political committees, and anything else the state comes up with. Busy, yes, but what a great place to be so. That's it.
Can I ask a quick question, Michelle?
Sure.
Relative to pre-voting, advanced voting or whatever.
Early voting?
Early voting.
Yeah.
That I know has been wildly successful.
Yes, it
Not
has.
only here in Maynard, but throughout the state.
Everywhere.
Yeah. What are the restrictions, if any, and I'm not making any saying that we should absolutely, what are the restrictions on doing it on the town elections to have pre-voting? Is there a state requirement?
I can look into that. I mean, it's not required, but it's a good question, if the town decides they want to do it.
If it
town
gets more
elections.
people to vote,
Yeah,
and gives more people access to the opportunity to vote,
I agree, yeah.
it might be a good thing, even if it's just during operation hour, because I know you don't want to have to staff Saturdays and, everything else.
Right.
But if it's something we could look into to see.
I'll
if
check with the Secretary of State's office to see if this has come up before, if we're even allowed to do that for a
And
local.
that's really the top, the
but-
first
right,
question would be,
right.
are we allowed to
So,
do it?
Absolutely, I'll look into
But
that
I
for
know
you.
from the primaries and from the regular elections,
It's been
is
fabulous.
probably more people voting pre than voting on
And
the day of
The
the.
voters love it. They come in, they come over to the window and, they just express how much they love the early voting, so,
I've done it a couple times myself.
Yeah.
It's very convenient.
yes,
and-
absolutely. So I certainly can
okay.
look into that for you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody else, any other questions? Okay.
Thanks, Michelle.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle.
Stantec. Stantec,
And the next PowerPoint presentation.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
I'm Victor Olson. I'm with Stantec. Been assisting the Maynard DPW with their ongoing II program. Just to give you a little history, Maynard is required by their NPDES permit, which is their permit associated with the wastewater treatment plant to discharge treated effluent. As part of that operation and maintenance of the plant, they need to operate and maintain their collection system, all the pipes, pump stations that collect the sewage and bring it to the treatment plant. Infiltration inflow is basically extraneous water. It's not sewage. It's rainwater that comes out of the sky, and it's groundwater that leaks into the pipes. If that gets into the pipes, it takes up capacity that's not available to treat sewage. Where that's a concern also is if it creates situations of capacity in the pipe or sanitary sewer overflows. And that's where DEP and EPA are most focused. Maynard's collection system.
You got it.
Oh, got it. There you go. Maynard's collection system originates back in the 1920s. Some of the oldest sections of the sewers. There's 42 miles of sewer pipes, various sizes, up to 20 inches in size. The town maintains 10 sewage pump stations, and 4 of which are critical pump stations. The remainder are smaller neighborhood pump stations, and there are 2 low-pressure grinder pump areas that serve the town. The original permits going back talks about having an II program. Back in the 80s, actually, the town did a town-wide metering program and did some infiltration inflow removal with that. Prior to that time, there were actually sanitary sewer overflows. There was much more volume of sewage in the system as well. That addressed some areas in area. It sort of identified 19 tributary areas in the city and monitored those to determine where the problem areas were. And then some rehabilitation was done more or less in the center of town, the core area, the commercial area, as well as down through the easement between the Elks and behind Powder Mill Road along the river. And the pump station was basically rehabilitated in that area to deal with those capacity issues and remove some of that extraneous flow at that time. But since that time, not a lot was done. So when the permit in 2013 came up again, they said, what have you been doing with your II program? And it was kind of crickets at that time. So it was actually prior to that, there was a draft that came out, and we prepared in 2011 a draft 5-year plan. And that was based on the original 88, 89 metering. And we focused on the problematic areas that were identified in that plan. And there were some non-priority areas that we said, all right, we'll save those for later. Based on that, we updated a 5-year plan in 2014. And that focused on those problem areas. We worked with the DPW to say, well, how much can you budget each year? And we came up with a 5-year program that looked at 2 tributary areas a year over a 3-year period, and then some time to do some follow-up investigations to identify the sources of the infiltration and inflow, and come up with recommendations to rehabilitate that. The system, schematically, we looked at the areas asterisked there in stars. That represents about 37% of the town area, our storage system, which were targeted. And that's the areas we looked at with the program that were decided. The first thing we did is we placed meters in the areas, in the problem areas. We used the mapping that was created. There's GIS mapping now, so it helps really to evaluate the data and look at cost effectiveness and setting priorities, what areas can be done. But also the meter data is very useful in evaluating impacts on the system. For example, in area G is where the new 129 Parker Street development was. So we were able to analyze the impacts of what that development would have on the system and what improvements would be needed. And from the investigations, we were aware of some issues in the sanitary sewer system, that project would not be supported without upgrades in the system. The town was successful in obtaining a grant using that information. From there, once you've done metering, what that does is it tells you which tributary areas have inflow, which ones have infiltration. And then based on that, you do recommendations. You do flow isolation, where you measure individual segments of sewer to see which pipes are actually defective in the area. But you want to do that in tributary areas that are showing that that's the problem. So those that sort of meet the threshold, you sort of, that's relatively cheap to do, but then once you figure out which segments they are, you CCTV those lines to identify what the problem is, whether it's roots, grease problems, cracks in the pipes, collapses, infiltration coming in. All of the above we found in the system. Yeah, all of those we found within the system. And then from that, we assessed what would need to be done to correct those problems and what the budget would be to fix that. At the same time, you know, the DPW keeps a record of problematic sewers. And when we were in areas investigating for II, we also took a look to determine which of these problematic sewers are also in those areas and identify those, because oftentimes those are related. So when we went in and we saw problematic sewer, for example, on Arthur Street, when we knew we had high infiltration there, when we TV'd it, the sewer was collapsing. So the problem was it was backing up often, but it was also a source of groundwater getting into the sewer system. So we're able to address 2 things at the same time. The other thing is the 129 Parker Street. Again, this work sort of helped us identify what would need to be done for improvements there. The majority of that work is all within the areas we investigated, with the exception of Area C, but Area C was one of the problem areas that was addressed in the original 88-89 report, so we knew there was some issues there that needed to be addressed as well. The 129 Parker Street, you can see conditions of the sewer were poor. They were on Parker Street itself. That sewer was in danger of collapsing. There was no walls left to it. Over this past winter, that pipe was completely replaced because of its condition. With that, we also replaced manholes. We're replacing the pipe. The picture on the left with the 2 gentlemen there, you can actually see there's a pump there, and the guy is standing in groundwater. So they had to lower the groundwater in order to build the pipe. And when the pipe was defective, all that groundwater was getting into the sewer lines, and that's what we're looking to get out of the sewer lines. We also did some rehabilitation from our investigations, included lining pipes and rehabilitating manholes. You can see on the left here, that was a before condition where the pipes were cracked. If the pipe's cracked and it hasn't begun to collapse, if you line it, you extend the life of that sewer. If you wait too long, now you have to dig up the roads, and it's much more costly to replace. At the same time, you're getting infiltration out of the pipe. The other condition we found was a lot of roots and sags. If you have roots in the pipe, they tend to collect grease and debris, and you get clogs, and they become maintenance issues. If the roots continue to grow and get bigger, they crack the pipes and cause problems as well. By lining the pipes, you eliminate that problem. So actually, this past fall, a draft NPDS permit came out. And there it says the Public Works is responsible for maintaining an ongoing program and continues with that. They also want the town to begin to focus on disconnection and redirection of any illegal downspouts and roof downspouts and educate the public on what that means. We put together a building inspection form for the DPW to use when they're in there doing maintenance on the homes, changing meters, so that they can record that information and begin to build a database of where that's a problem. Sump pumps, for example, one sump pump's 3 to 6 gallons a minute. That's 1,200 gallons a day. When you compare that to what a 3-bedroom home, that's 330. So you're talking 4 times the flow coming out of a home with the sump pump. You get 400 sump pumps, that's 500,000 gallons a day. So that's an area that DP tends to be focused on. But we want to build a little bit of data and information to strategize on where this is, and part of that may be public education to separate it, put it out in the backyards. This is an example of homeowners actually taking the initiative to do it. It's not the most sightly thing, but where the people have run pipes from their home, from the sump pumps, out to the edge of their yard so it could get into catch basins. I've seen some towns actually run pipes to homes and separate services for drains. But that's an expensive option. What we really want to do is try to get them to dump it into their backyards. In 2017, Mass DEP actually came out with a new guidelines for performing II analysis. Part of that was to inventory all the existing conditions. We have GIS mapping, so that's something that's easily to provide. In there, they're asking for the town to monitor flow monitor the entire town and do data analysis, much like we did back in 88, 89, and come up with a program to that. The town actually submitted information in 2017 indicating what they have done so far, that they were in the middle of a 5-year program, what their approach was, and submitted that information to DEP, and indicated we want to get through that program. Just recently, last week, the town DPW actually received a letter from Massachusetts DEP asking for more information. They are pushing to remeter the town, given the current conditions of the system. They thought you just relying on the old 88, 89 flow metering data. Again, we did new metering in the 7 problem areas. That meets the standard now, but that was only 37% of the area. They're asking to do the other remaining portion of the town. What that does is it basically proves whether you have a problem in the area, not have a problem in the area, and rules it out. But they also want, because we did the 5-year plan, based on the findings, we focused our efforts on what we found. So they just want an update on what the findings, what we actually did with that program, and give them a summary report for that. So the flow data analysis needs to be updated based on the new guidelines and recommend actions for moving forward. We just finished the 5-year program in 2018. Typically, all the towns that have sewage in the state of Massachusetts were required to meter their entire towns by December 30th, 2017. We submitted data, and they said if you have any previous studies and reports, that could be utilized to satisfy that. We submitted all that information from 89 right up through 2017 that was done. And they but they still want to have new metering. And it would be good for those areas where we're doing a lot of work right now, and we've corrected problems, to do a post-meter of that area to see the net impact, the results of that previous work, to see the precondition versus what the current condition is now.
Sorry, I don't want to interrupt your presentation. I was going to wait to the end, but
Yep,
it's panicking me a little bit.
sure.
When you talk about metering, are you talking individual household meters?
No, what it does is, the town, when we did the original 88, 89 report, we took the sanitary sewer system. So if you look at the mapping of the city, it might be useful to, if I give you,
No, I've got it on the screen.
yeah, so if you look at the area, there's little boundaries, watershed boundaries, and the town has broken up the system by 19 areas, A through S. And what you do is you meter the total of that, what's coming from that tributary area.
Okay.
And you monitor rainfall, and you monitor groundwater to see the correlation between that, to see when it rains out, do the flows jump way up? Or the rainfall comes and it just goes a little bit. Goes a little bit, it's not a problem there. If it jumps up, then you know you got an inflow.
So are these, when you say metering, are they temporary meters?
Temporary meters.
Okay, so
Yes,
that's,
yep.
I was worried you were starting to talk about this unfunded mandate coming from the state,
No.
saying we had to meter this, first I thought it was every house, and then so, okay, good.
And what it does is it puts the whole system on the same level as far as evaluation. But then, once you get the metering program, then you can put together a more long-term program and use that to go through a more cost-effective analysis on what you do.
Right,
So
thank
it's
you. Sorry
part of
to
that
interrupt.
is the program. I'm almost at the end anyways. So, bottom line is, that metering is used to sort of make recommendations for further studies. Some of those types of things we did already with the previous metering program and the previous II work, but just even the recent work. And they want to get this information in the letter by September 30th. Spoke to them that, we're not going to be able to meter the entire town to the criteria by September 30th, so we'll have to meet with DPW to come up with a response and ask for an extension for that. But they're going to want to have that metered probably within the 2020 timeframe. So we can build on the work that's been completed to date. We'll ask for the extension, and we probably want to develop a metering program, strategize in the best places to put that, to make sure it meets the new criteria that came out in 2017. So they have a whole guidelines on how you go about it from the beginning to the end. So it's just, but they want the entire site metered. We can phase the actual implementation in the long-range program of that. And again, we need to report on this on an annual basis to DEP and EPA as we do this work. That's part of the requirement to do that reporting. So with that, I'll open it up for questions. It's a lot to take in.
I noticed that Summerhill Road keeps coming up as a problematic sewer. So what's the cause of that?
Tim, you familiar with Summerhill Road?
Summerhill, we had a lot of root problems in there over the past 5 years. We've brought in a company called Duke's Root Control. They spray a foam down the line. We've cambered it and noticed a bunch of roots. They spray it with a 3-year warranty. So every 3 years, we have them come and hit those problems. It kind of where it goes in off Mill Street down along the river, comes back up on Summerhill, and it's not too bad there. And then we get more root problems as it goes back along the river. It gets into the woods. There's trees all around it. It's clay pipe, and the roots infiltrate from there. Comes out to Summerhill Glen. But mainly root problems in there from what we've seen.
So that's an area,
Root control is taking care of a lot of that.
yeah, that's an area probably that has, the groundwater's not high, so the trees are looking for a source of water and infiltrating into the sewer pipes. Lining does help that if it continues, if the foam root control doesn't work, then that's the next option. In areas where you sort of have a combination of cracks and leaking in the pipe and roots and sags, that's when you want to look at rehabilitating it. I think you're managing it well, Tim, with the foam. It's just, you have to be you can't skip on if you wait. Yeah, if you don't, the grease clogs, it gets caught up on that net of roots, and it creates maintenance headaches and backups.
Now, the metering, you said the prior metering completed in 2014 to through 2016 may be used in conjunction with the new metering.
Correct.
So we can use that, but we can't use the 89, 88, 89.
Correct.
I understand, I mean, that's like 30 years old.
Correct. And what we did is utilize the report, and when we were saying, all right, we want to develop an ongoing program, we said, all right, we'll spend, say it's $80,000 a year doing investigate, which is a modest amount, but it allowed you to do a little bit of everything, where you're metering, you're investigating, you're finding problems, rather than just saying, all right, we're going to spend all this money just on metering and not have any answers to solve the problem yet, so it allowed you to actually address things right away.
Is DEP typically receptive to that type of program? So, needing the extension and...
I did speak with Dave Boyer's office at DEP Central Region, and they will grant an extension. They said they will meet with the town and their consultants to come up with a plan. Again, all towns that have sewers have metered there citywide already and submitted it. So I think they'll be receptive to say, hey, we need a little time over the next year to get everything done, but we will comply with that. They're open to that. If you said, well, in a year from now you didn't do anything, you'd probably be looking at an administrative order and fines and that sort of thing.
If my question's out of bounds, just say it's out of bounds, not for this meeting, not for this discussion. But probably about a month and a half, 2 months ago, the board had a presentation on the water side relative to infrastructure and the costs that if we were to say, today we're going to bring everything up to date, and my recollection is the cost was $7.9 million or thereabouts. Do we have any estimate on the sewer side to do the same thing relative to what it would cost? And the reason I ask this question is because I want the community to have an understanding of the breadth of the problem that we have in our water and sewer. We act as the water and sewer commissioners here in Maynard, and we need to also have an understanding so that we can begin to plan for the future and act fiscally responsible relative to our water and sewer rates and everything else with the knowledge of what we've got ahead of us. So the question is, if you don't know, that's fine, but I think it's something that we should know going forward. What is the outstanding cost to bring our sewer system up to snuff?
Yeah, it's not a simple answer as on the water side, but the guidelines, the new guidelines, actually goes through a process where you meter. When you meter the areas, it tells you where the problem areas are. The problem areas are basically where there's a concentration of infiltration inflow that says it's cost effective to go investigate those areas. Those areas that don't show above that threshold, you don't look at. Doesn't mean there isn't isolated problems in that area, and that's where the problematic soil list comes into play, so that you can address those issues. But to focus on infiltration and inflow and where the problems are, you use that as the guideline to make your recommendations for your program. Then you go out and you look at it. Now you identify the problem. You say, well, this pipe is collapsed. It needs to be replaced. That's without question that has to be done. There may be another one where it's leaking very bad, and you say, well, we want to line it. Well, the lining costs $40,000. But to treat all that infiltration come in, there's a transport and treatment cost associated with that per gallon. Over the course of the year, all that infiltration could add up to 1 million plus gallons in there. So you do a cost-effective analysis, say, what's it cost to transport and treat the water getting into that little source segment versus repairing it? If it's cost-effective, you repair it. If it's not, you don't do it. So there's a methodology for doing that, and also for prioritization of that. The ones that it's very cost-effective to do, where you're getting a lot of inflow out at a relatively low cost, they tend to go at the top of the list. The ones where it costs you more to fix it than it does to transport and treat it, you may put that off at the end until it gets worse.
Is it not proper strategy, or is it not industry practice, best practice, to sort of know where we are globally. To know that in this section of town, it might be in pretty good shape, but 10 years from now, we probably should be looking at that.
Yeah, and that,
Section of town, we're gonna have to fix this within 3-4 years, and then you add all that up and you come to however.
yeah,
tens of
that can be
dollars.
done. That can be done. That's a sort of an asset management.
Yeah.
And that was done on the water side, has not yet been done
Okay,
on the sewer side. I would say we would want to do this metering exercise first, because then that information helps with that decision-making.
yeah, and by no means am I instructing you to do that, because I don't have
Right.
that authority. It's
Right.
just, I'm bringing this up for discussion.
And there's a cost to evaluate and do that and do it, but it becomes a smart way of looking at it, and you're addressing, you're focusing on the areas where the biggest problems are, and you're spending those dollars wisely to correct those problems, so they don't get worse.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other?
Any other questions? Comments? Yes, Wayne?
Mr. Chairman and members of the board, I'd like to just point out, and I'll defer to Victor on this, but this letter that we got from DEP requiring the additional metering and stuff, well, it was somewhat anticipated eventually. As Victor mentioned, a lot of the municipalities and most of the state municipalities have been required to do that. I don't believe this is something that we had program funding for, and the metering program is rather expensive, so we're gonna be coming to the board looking for funding, whether it's fall town meeting or spring town meeting, most likely fall, because we're gonna have to start sooner if we need to get an extension from them from a year, so, for a year rather. So I just wanted to bring that to the board's attention that this, well, we knew this was coming eventually, we weren't anticipating it last week, and it's kind of coincidental to this presentation that happened, but we will be seeking requests from the board for funding.
I think I stayed late to add a couple of slides as it came in the day when the slides were due. But I think prior to this new program coming out, our approach was we were going to sort of do things a little, a couple of areas each year and do an ongoing program and do it sort of that way, using the previous data as sort of a guideline on where to look.
Wayne, that type of project can be funded out of the stabilization from the enterprise fund. Is that accurate, or?
Possible, I don't think, just literally happened over the past couple of days.
And I'm not want to have this discussion. Just generally, is it permissible to do it that way?
I believe that's the case.
That would be where I'd look first,
Yeah.
yes.
But one of the things is you do have to develop a response before September 30th.
Okay, so I'll look,
Oh, what, 30th?
September 30th, a response or a request an extension and what you're planning on doing, that, so you
As
don't.
long as it's not June 30th.
Yeah. And I did call him on that he's willing to meet with the town
very good.
and go through that.
Now, is the state come up with any kind of, grants for, or money for this type of study, or?
Not necessarily for the study, but they'll do like SRF programs, state revolving fund, low interest loans, that type of thing. Like I said, we were able to leverage, because we had a lot of investigative work and we had metering, we were able to do a model and look at the impacts in the system when a new development came in place. And the town was successful using that information to help get a MassWorks grant to pay for, I think it was $3.2 million worth of it, which was, without this upfront work, it would have been more difficult to pursue that. Thank you. It's a lot to learn. We'll have a quiz at the end of the week. Thank you.
Thank you.
Did we not?
Yeah. We didn't get it.
That's a good question.
We should.
Yeah, why not?
Cannabis time. A lot of stuff.
There's a lot of stuff.
There you are. Yeah.
Now you're official.
Very good.
Sorry, it's not caked. I know.
No.
Do you want to be cake?
This is like
She's got cake too, though.
I could be both. I could be both. This is like twice in 6 weeks. I know.
You're a regular.
What a Maynard from here.
Okay, all right. Can you introduce yourself, Sarah, though, real quick, for the camera?
Everyone, my name is Sarah Bellino, Town Council.
Good evening.
So, I'll explain in that The planning board recently, and I think I've said this to the board, the planning board recently approved the special permit for Wellspring, located at 4 Nason Street. If I have that address correct, it's where the old meeting place was, across from Serendipity. Okay, so that made me move towards making sure the board is prepared or sort of already thinking about our application process for an eventual license. However, Megan Zamuto can explain more, but one of the things that I know is a requirement, or at least is a requirement for this body, is to have the provisional certificate provided by the Cannabis Control Commission. Megan made some calls, so she can speak to this more, but I don't think there's any urgency to have necessary application complete anytime soon, because the feedback we got from Cannabis Control Commission is that it's going to be a while till that provisional certificate comes back. Do you want to talk a little bit more?
Yeah, sure. So, as Greg said, the special permit granted by the planning board kind of sparked us to think about when we are approached by retailers, we want to make sure we have an application form that has been accepted by the board. So, but we do have some time. The 2 retailers that have host community agreements to date are Mass Wellspring and Green Star. And when I spoke with a contact at the Cannabis Control Commission about a week and a half ago, Wellspring, which does have their planning board special permit, has not submitted a complete application to the Cannabis Control Commission to date. Once they do submit that, they will get in a queue to be reviewed, and that queue to be reviewed can take approximately 8 weeks, maybe longer, to start the review process. So there's definitely some time there. The other applicant is Green Star, and they have submitted a complete application to the Cannabis Control Commission. They're still working through the planning board to, kind of collect their local licenses, and they haven't been reviewed yet officially by the Cannabis Control Commission, but they're a little bit further along in the process, it sounds like, from the CCC level. So we invited Sarah Bellino here today to just start the discussion about the application so that, we can take comment and kind of prepare something for your consideration at a later date, because we do want to be prepared when the time comes. Also, we want to take a look at our regulations, because I believe Maynard was pretty early on developing these, which was fantastic, but there have been some new language developed and more kind of studying this new issue, and some of that new language might be appropriate to include in our regulations if the board so pleases. So we invited Council Bellino to come and highlight some of those areas so that we can think about making edits if the board were so choose.
So we've already accepted regulations.
That's right.
We've set our regulations.
Yes.
That's right. But we're looking to update, potentially, the board to consider updates.
Do you have, at this point, and I don't think I saw them here, but perhaps because it doesn't exist, a red line version showing us where these changes might be, or were you just prepared to tell us about them?
Broadly, I know that Attorney Federoff forwarded some regulations that had been implemented in another town later, so more recently, and she was able to go into a deeper analysis with all of the things that had transpired since you had initially.
Oh, there is a highlighted one. Is that?
There are a couple things in there that are highlighted in that you have some discretion to include them or not. They're not required. You may want to eliminate them or leave them in. So the regulations that you adopted, I want to say 2018, I'm not sure the exact date, versus the ones that Kate's prepared and suggests today, have been streamlined. So she's gone through and taken out a lot of the things that are duplicative from the state requirements, which, I think eliminates potential conflicts between state requirements and town requirements. So if you just consistently refer to what the state requires, you don't have to always update your own regulations with what the state requirement is. So it cuts down on just some administrative things, keeping up with changes in the regulations.
Megan, excuse me, do you know which of these documents are the ones that
Yeah, I brought
they
you,
put the changes in?
the last one, Maynard BOS Retail Regulations, KMF.
That has yellow highlights. Those are the,
So that one has, some highlights that include, things that could be added, like, I think hours of operation, and things like that.
Yeah, one of the things that, we recommend is that the Board of Selectmen, as the local licensing authority, sets the certain conditions like hours of operation, the impact of a licensee's violations or actions outside of Maynard with other licenses, so that way you can bring that information into your own enforcement process. The benefit of having, Board of Selectmen control over setting the hours of operation is that it's a lot easier to get somebody in before the Board of Selectmen, to change the hours of operation, to, have issues with violations, rather than having your planning board, for instance, be the entity that sets.
we
those
did
sorts of
have that
conditions.
discussion about the hours of operation.
Is that in the host community agreement? Yeah.
I can't recall if it was in the host community agreement, but we,
And it very well may be.
It's somewhere.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I don't remember it being at 11 o'clock at night.
Well, I think what
And
we
it may
did,
vary.
I think
It'll
what we
vary
did was
based on
mirrored
where
the
stores are.
alcohol.
So it's,
that's what I recall, that it was,
We have to go by that?
Yeah, I think that's what we did. I don't know if we
Should
had
go
to
by
or
that.
not.
And that's another thing that we've kind of given more thought to, is that you can mirror your existing alcohol regulations, but you're not required to
Okay.
under state law. It is helpful because it's an existing regulatory framework that the town has been operating under for however many years, but you don't have to include those sorts of things. And other things like requiring a retailer, for example, to post certain signs that say smoking while pregnant is X, Y, and Z. You don't have to have it in your regulations because that's already enforced by the state.
So-
So a lot of it is streamlining and just confirming no conflict with state law.
so I think just to speak for a little bit of clarity on specifically the hours, I do recall that was the direction of the board to match the hours of the liquor licenses. So Sarah, would you know if these highlighted sections of the version that Kate prepared, if it says specifically Monday through Saturday 8 a.m. to 11 p.m. and Sunday noon to 9 p.m.
This is a suggestion.
That's right. So that's how I take it as well. But now I'm just curious, why these hours?
Because they were already the hours that the town had arrived upon as being
Oh.
appropriate for
And
alcohol
didn't we
service.
have that discussion?
we
Yeah.
had a discussion, I think it's in the host agreement.
Yeah, but we change our mind?
It's in
We
the
have
host
that
agreement.
discussion.
I think we've already signed the host agreement, so we can only change it in future host agreements.
Wait, that's a good question. So
So having it in your regulations, or having the Board of Selectmen will set the hours. Like, you don't have to establish the hours in your regulations. You can do it on a case-by-case basis, based on the type of organization, the type of retailer, the location that it is, and that sort of thing. It gives you more flexibility.
But we've already entered it into signed host
That's
agreements.
different
Like,
with
we're
that
locked into
particular-
that, right, with those two.
with that particular.
and that host community agreements.
Can't do anything regarding that at this point.
Well, I mean, you can invite them to renegotiate the hours of operation.
Well, especially the one on Main Street.
They would probably
And then
want
if
something
you,
in
you know,
exchange.
Yeah,
Right.
I think it's like a signed contract at this point, like, I think
Yeah.
the ship's sailed.
But that's fine, I mean,
Yeah.
this is one
Okay.
of those things that's still so undefined in this state that it's not entirely unreasonable, as long as you're not being
So
unreasonable.
once it's in the regulations, it's in the regulations, and we've adopted these regulations. So we'd have to go back and alter the regulations if we want to change the hours.
Yeah, but to
Just like we would with our liquor regulations.
Yeah.
We just
Yeah,
vote.
yeah.
Except that,
To Sarah's point, whenever the renewal comes up, we could, renegotiate that.
right.
The host community agreement,
And just to clarify again, because I feel like I just want to make sure I'm
you
not
could
missing.
amend it and say, the hours of operation will be subject to the permit conditions imposed by the Board of Selectmen when and if you ever
Okay.
get around to getting a
Because you're
permit.
bringing up a good point, because you're talking about the location. So one of the locations is obviously, from my perspective, is a little bit more of a, contentious to me. So the one on Nason Street has got to me, it's an issue to have that till 11 o'clock at night is, you know.
Right, just,
Everybody
It
else
is
around,
possible.
everybody else around is gonna be closed and they're gonna be open till 11.
But that would raise an issue, is it, and I guess based on the host agreement, I guess it is, permitted to tell one business of the same type that they can be open till 10 and tell the other one that they can't be because of their location.
you do it with
That's
alcohol.
permitted.
Yeah.
I have a question, if I'm permitted to ask. So at renewal time, because just like a liquor license, in the fall, we will be renewing any marijuana licenses, correct? When we do the alcohol renewals, that's part of like the package that we asked our police. If there are any issues, we have our inspectors, the fire department, the building inspector. They come back and they give us any concerns, and we can add those types of concerns, and we could modify if the police gave us a report that said, hey, we've had X incidents, but if we have no concerns with any of our inspectors or your local licensing authority that goes out to inspect these places, maybe that would be another way to base it too.
No, that's exactly right.
Or the residents' concerns, if we're having complaints from residents, maybe that would be an added thing on the marijuana. Just wanted to voice that.
So I'm actually not seeing hours, by the way, Mr. Chairman, on the host community agreement, but I do recall those, the direction. So I, you know, it just says, you know, there's gonna be security and they have to report them, but.
The other thing right here is 7.6, it says license, it doesn't say a host community, so it's when we issue the licenses to them, that has nothing to do with the host community agreement.
Yeah, so I think we're okay either way. Like, I think the point is that the regulations are not set in stone yet. It's an opportunity to make sure they look the way they want it to look. So if,
It isn't the point of the discussion we're having, that's the reason why we're having this.
that's what I'm saying. So regardless of what the host community agreement says, because I just reread it for Wellspring, it doesn't get into that level of detail. It talks mostly about what the sort of like agreement with the town, so community impact payments and taxes and whatnot.
So where, I'm missing it, because I'm trying to read it, too fast, but you mentioned something about, if something happens in another town.
Yeah, so that's another thing. So you want to be able to consider, if you want to be able to consider the actions of a particular licensee.
That's.
It has multiple
Licensed.
franchises.
Business somewhere else.
Right, so if you've got this licensee that they have violations left and right, you want to be able to bring them in and find out what the deal is and consider whether or not it's, the licensing continues to be appropriate in light of that, so.
And is that in this the highlighted document?
Yeah, it's in, I think that it's in, I just got these late yesterday afternoon myself, so, I know that in the regulations that, were put together for another town that I believe Kate sent, I don't know if it was.
Sent this Webster.
The Webster one?
Yeah, Webster's a guideline one, and then there's a set of regulations that were put together for Millis that are more condensed,
Okay.
and,
Yeah, we got both of them.
Okay.
That one too.
yeah. Yeah, it's in the recommendation, in the,
So it's not in the Maynard one, but it's in the Millis
no, it's
one.
not in the
Okay,
one that
all
you
right.
guys,
Yeah.
right,
Got it.
that you guys already adopted.
So question on the language on that, if we adopted that language, so one of the people we have a host agreement with has a medical marijuana facility in a different town, and they were recently violated. So would the language encompass that for their, like the normal?
If it happens again.
If
Like,
it
obviously we
happens
can't hold it
again.
again.
For
I mean,
adult,
like,
what do they call it? They don't call it recreational anymore, they call it adult
Adult
use.
Yeah,
Is that
I
right?
don't know,
okay,
just because the interplay between medical and adult use is still so
right.
Is that yours?
I wondered if
Defined
we
right now?
make the language really broad.
Yeah, the thing is about the recreational / adult use.
Adult use.
Hard time remembering saying that now. There aren't any regulations, so presumably it would be fine for you to consider, but I don't know.
Okay.
And we just don't know the answer to that.
I know, it's all new.
Yeah, that's the thing. So put it in there and, you know, whoops.
Go
see
switch
what
houses.
happens. No, don't, I didn't say that. Just kidding.
That's how case law gets.
But no, that's something that, that we can look into more closely, because obviously
Okay.
it's a very relevant question.
Right, just because it's come up recently.
Yeah.
I think our other one is like, will be part of a franchise. Yeah. In the way that they're.
Right, so it might, I mean, it might
Yeah.
be, helpful.
I did like the Webster one as well, kind of like the guide
Me too.
for people who wanna open, like a step-by-step guide, I think that's fantastic.
Yeah, so using that in connection with, you know, the actual application form, just, you know, it's helpful.
But they, well, wouldn't a lot of that already be done if we already have a,
The host community.
host community agreement?
Sure.
Like the steps, like I was looking at
They've
that.
already followed the
You know,
steps.
with the application and that as part of the application, with us, a lot of that stuff has already taken place.
Now, for you guys
So
now.
it will be, I mean, maybe it's,
For the
you know,
future
guide for the
applicants.
future, but yeah,
Yeah.
for the two groups that we've discussed these things with already, it's, you know, half that list is already completed before they even got the list.
Right.
That's
But,
true.
you know, if either one of them happened to fall out of the running for their state licensing for whatever reason, you know, you have it in place, because businesses change, presumably they won't be the same.
We also have no limit, so we could get 20 applications next year.
Right, that was my, right, because Megan had mentioned that initially you were discussing limiting it to 2, which
didn't
this
pass.
could be just an exercise in futility, but since you aren't, you wanna be ready.
So we do have the third as a reminder to the board.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, you have a third?
yeah, right, New Can.
Hudson?
From Concord.
I haven't heard from,
Concord, yeah, and they're in conversations with council,
Yeah.
about the host community agreement.
Did they officially apply, like submit? And
I think we gave
No.
permission to,
Right.
Right.
talk.
so we connected their lawyers to our lawyers. And
Not
we're
with
letting them,
me, I have no idea.
No.
right, Kate's working out with them, but we gave them the exact same host community agreement, and said this is the terms that we liked with these people, so that's where we left.
Do we know what site they're looking at, or if they're looking at?
I don't believe we do.
I don't think so, we know which site yet.
They approached us with
Yeah.
like, kind of saying like, hey, we're thinking about coming to town. So, which is advantageous, that we kind of help them go to where we want.
Suggestions for sites?
We certainly
The
will.
mill?
Has anybody been looking for a non-retail marijuana related business, like cultivation or testing?
We did have some interest,
That's when you had the auction at the,
yeah, 111 Powder Mill was up for auction,
Right.
and one of the developers that were looking at the site was thinking about a cultivation use, but they were not successful with acquiring that property.
They went to the school, right? The school?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, well, right.
Has that gone?
I haven't
through?
met with them, so no, I mean, do you know the status of the, on the separate topic, for the public that's not aware. So we're referring to the old Stratus building at 111 Powder Mill. It was up for auction by the commercial real estate broker, and a Chinese, I don't wanna get the term wrong, but is it a Chinese?
Beijing Royal School.
There you go.
I believe they closed the end of May.
really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we,
Closed it?
do we,
You mean they?
Close the sale.
The auction on the sale,
Yeah.
1.9?
I don't know the sale price.
That was higher than
Yeah, he was higher.
Yeah,
That
that was
was
the whole thing.
3.8. Oh, really?
Yeah, it's a little higher.
Still okay.
so we look forward to meeting with them, and but we
They were
haven't,
here once before.
Yes,
that's what I heard. If it's the same group,
yeah, it was. 'cause
It's the
it was
same group.
Same group for the same place, for the same
This is
spot.
either their second or third attempt to buy the same piece of property.
okay. So Megan's been on top of trying to organize that
No
with them.
cultivation there, so far.
Yeah,
No, I guess.
yeah, it's not cultivation, right?
Oh,
But he
no.
put, but that person who came in second in the bidding has a deal where if the school falls through again, he gets it at the price he bid.
Oh, that's cool.
Okay, good to
Got
know.
right of first refusal.
All right.
Finding
Interesting.
things out.
Interesting.
So anyway, so
So, Mr. Chairman, I would encourage the board to just look at these documents, and if there's something in particular, whether it be highlighted or otherwise, that you would like incorporated into the, again, as I led into this, we are not in any level of urgency. As Megan already pointed out, the Wellspring's not even in the queue yet,
Yeah.
and Green Star hasn't even been past our planning board, so
Have time.
we have a little bit of time, but I wanted this all on y'all's plates to kind of think about, and then to take your time and review.
I was gonna say, can we come up with a meeting that we're going to review it by, so we can actually
Absolutely.
have like a timeline and.
I think the, yeah, like the hours,
Yeah, that's the one.
based on how every other community that has issued licenses to date handles stores and the timing and everything, 11 o'clock is kind of late, but.
Okay.
You know,
But if there's anything else, that's what I'm saying, I think so if you like, Mr. Chairman, we can schedule another time for an
yeah, that's
upcoming
fine.
selectmen
Put it
meeting.
on an agenda and make it a topic of its own and, go over these, everyone prepared to make the changes they want.
It would be nice to kind of compare with the one from Webster, because I like that.
Yeah, and the Millis one is good, the Millis, is good too,
I also think we should approve an application and anything else we wanna include in like an application packet sooner rather than later, in case we start to
Right.
get an influx of applications. If people here, we haven't set a limit.
I guess that's true, but the first step would be the host community agreement, so it wouldn't be, like, I would recommend that as I'm bringing it up now for those two that we do have perspective.
Yep.
But, like, we won't be,
Wouldn't the first step for them to come to the town, say, I'm interested in taking an application before they get a host community agreement? So that's what I'm saying, like, having packets ready seems like that would be the first step.
that's not the approach we've taken. So the first, because one, we don't have the application yet, but secondly, the first thing we do is that they say, we'd love to give you an application. By the way, there's a host community agreement that we first need to get hammered out. Because if they're not even willing to do that, then they wouldn't even get it as far
That
as.
just seems backwards to me.
So be it. No, we can,
I
either
don't
way,
know, like, what your thoughts are. That doesn't, to me, it seems like we should have an application that gives us their general information, a chance to research who they are, have them go through the formalities of following our instructions to see if they can even comply with that, and then once we have that information and have done our due diligence, then we engage in negotiations for our host agreement.
so it's an application to apply for an application?
Which is like an application of like interest,
And
basically.
part of the application is the negotiation and
Right.
finalization
Yeah.
of those community
Part of the
agreement.
checklist.
All right,
So
so
I
be
agree
it.
that having somebody come in and fill out an application with all of their background information that you require is super helpful before you get into the negotiation.
That's a good point. Now Megan's been doing that as example of this recent prospective, this new can, establishment. Like that is the process. We just didn't have it formalized to that degree.
Right, and that's what I'm saying, like, I think if we formalize it, just in case people come in, I think that would be better. And I understand getting a host agreement, and we were kind of flying by the seat of our pants because this happened so fast.
Yeah.
If we could get procedures
Yeah.
in place, I think that would be better.
Similar to the business guide.
So
Yeah,
we have to
Exactly,
have
yeah,
a,
OMS.
Yeah.
Yeah.
if we come up with an application, does it have to be approved by the CCC?
I don't believe so,
That would-
no.
Well, I don't know. It's kind of like the liquor licenses, in a sense, do.
Well, the liquor license applications, they're the ones that make the application. The law actually says approved by the ABCC, so technically you could make your own liquor license applications, but it's a mess. I do not believe that the Cannabis Control Commission has preempted the field of
Which is good in a way.
creating the
Town-
application.
Lets the town do their own application.
Yeah.
Is there any more word on the CCC reviewing the HCA's?
I don't know.
I know, they thought they were gonna
I
possibly.
thought that was your assignment, but I won't do it.
Relative to hours of operation, we know of, there's probably maybe a dozen now that are open across the state of these, maybe. I'd like to do a little research to see what the hours of operation are in the other. Then I would really like to see, and I don't know if this is possible, but to see what volume of business is even being done in the later hours. So but then I think I only know of three. I know Leicester. I know the first few that opened seemed to be in remote areas.
Yeah,
Then-
there's one in Salem that's.
Then the Newton one, the
Yeah.
Brookline.
Brookline.
The Brookline one was like on a main drag down, right near the Boston line.
Right,
So,
and then also think about the neighbor,
so you have to think about the neighborhood and the impact on that. But I'd like to see what the hours of operation are in some of these other ones.
Wonder
And,
if we go online and see it.
I'm sure you can.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's readily available.
I agree with David, but I just play devil's advocate too. I just think we need to be careful limiting hours, because one of the biggest community concerns is the impact this is gonna have on traffic and people coming to town. If the hours are super limited and we have an influx of people in very limited hours, that could be detrimental to the downtown traffic scene.
Yeah, I don't know what else you have in your surrounding communities.
We only have Hudson, and everything kind of east of us has a moratorium.
Yeah,
Oh,
and
so yeah, this is gonna be a hot spot.
that's what the prospective thing, that's what the prospective businesses think too. And Hudson's is not, it's not a direct comparison only because it's on the outskirts of
And
town.
it's also on a main drag. It's not,
It's on a main drag, yes.
it's not in a downtown
And it's away from
location.
downtown, it's not
Right.
Can I just
Yeah.
say, I live in Hudson, so I just want to give a little bit. They actually don't allow parking at the one in Hudson. It closes at 7 o'clock.
Oh,
I actually had the opportunity of living directly next to the shuttle stop for the last couple of months, because it was at the old police station, which I live behind. And I lived there, so I'm saying my opinion. It was not as big of a deal as everybody thought it was. It was extremely well regulated, and they shuttled from the police station to the thing. So you actually cannot park in the parking lot of the shop unless you're a medical card holder. And the second shop that's going in Hudson is actually going directly across the street from the first one.
Oh, really?
But they've moved the shuttle stop, huh?
It's like Burger King and McDonald's.
Yeah, yeah, and they've moved the shuttle stop now in Hudson to Houghton Street, which is off of South Street in Hudson, which is, I'd say more towards the like highway that way. I don't really understand it, but that's where they've moved it to now, so.
But no, it's further away than the other one was.
It's much further away.
Yes, it's kind of back towards Stowe in the.
It's
So-
actually, well, no, it's Houghton Street, so it's closer to like, it's off of South Street, so it's closer to like Washington Street and the highway over
Like,
there.
Okay.
So closer to over where,
It's where like
where the auto dealership is, that, in that
the
general.
Ford dealership, yeah, but it's really, so Houghton Street is really, next to, the Horseshoe Pub.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Where
Oh, it's in,
Horseshoe
oh,
Pub
it's in,
is.
so it's in that,
right
it's in
there.
that lot.
So there's the
Isn't
skate
that
shop,
The old
there's a
municipal lot,
skate
right?
park right there, and the
Yeah.
Houghton Street parking,
Okay,
like, yeah, the food
Okay, all
pantry
right,
in
yeah,
Hudson now.
But in
I know
town,
it's
it seems
skate
to hear
park.
they close at 7 o'clock. So.
They close at 7 o'clock, yeah, and both, I believe both shops are closed at 7 o'clock.
And the Acton one that's medical, I only see one car sitting
Yeah,
there.
there's hardly any.
And it's gotta be the employer, I mean, the employee, you know,
Yeah,
I've never seen any,
Well, that's because it's medical use.
Yeah, but I mean, Salem's had a huge influx, Brookline's gone crazy, like.
Salem does a shuttle too.
Yeah.
Is it a schedule thing?
Salem
Like
It's a
does
schedule.
appointments? How does it
No,
work?
you have to,
6:45?
Salem closes at 6:45, Brighton's the one that stays open the latest, that's till 10.
yeah.
Boston stays open till 7.
what time was the one in Brookline?
Oh, Brookline, sorry, that's 10 o'clock at night.
Yeah, and that one's in like a main drag, it's like in the city.
Yeah.
Is it really?
Yeah.
We'll do some
Hudson, you have to
research.
go in the police station, and when it was at the police station, you had to go with your license out, you go through your license, go in the line in a tent,
And Hudson?
wait,
for the
yeah,
shuttle?
yeah,
So
wait.
there's,
Show them your license again before you get off the bus, get on the bus.
Yeah.
You have to show your license like 3 times
yeah,
before you get in.
It's worse than
then-
getting on a plane.
And then you had to go through the process on the way back.
right.
Like they're checking you in, checking you out.
We're doing some research. I mean, the police chief is getting the lessons learned from the various police departments that are dealing with this now, and he's gonna be reviewing all the security plans, as well as the planning boards have been in review of.
There was security there all the time.
Yeah.
It was, the shop, I believe, paid for the security in Hudson.
Oh, yeah, no, we're not.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, they'll be paying for the shop in Maynard as well. So, I don't know, we'll just put it on a future agenda, I guess.
Yeah.
Very good.
And, you know, you can maybe take the same opportunity to revisit the cultivation regulations.
It's a good idea.
Are there updated legislative spots? Yeah, we just didn't, it just wasn't on as an agenda item, but yeah, we can, and again, it's the same sort of thing, it's streamlined, you know, less duplicative information.
I think it's a good idea, just because I know I wasn't on the board, when we first started the marijuana regulations, but so much has changed and everything's open, things have opened, so people have gotten a chance to see what works, what doesn't.
Yeah.
So I think it's a smart idea to kind of revisit it, so we're efficient with what we're doing.
It's true, but it was helpful having it, as Megan alluded to. I think it was excellent of the town to have even draft regulations already set. That way, people knew what they were buying, so to speak, when they were trying to look at town. It was good.
Okay. So we'll put it on the future, and you're welcome to come back if Kate's.
Can't answer all your questions.
No.
I'll try.
And we'll make sure we get,
Soon on Rockland Ave though, right?
Oh, yeah.
You're so much more pleasant than Adam.
All of the rest of the
So,
Actually, so I don't know if you guys wanna go there yet,
No,
but that's not one of them.
Did anyone show you the Facebook photo from Rockland Ave that had the heart-shaped balloon that says you're accepted?
Oh, that's so sweet.
I haven't seen that.
No, I didn't see that.
That's pretty cool.
That's very nice.
Right? Well, they made it.
Yeah, I like that.
Oh, that's funny.
okay.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you,
Pleasure.
Sarah.
Always,
Have a nice night.
always a good time.
Thank you much.
You too.
Take your sign, yeah.
Thank you, Sarah.
So, discuss the development agreement working group for 115 Main Street.
So, Mr. Chairman, Megan Zamuto could provide an update if you would like.
Sure. Mr. Chairman, at the last meeting, we had a similar memo to the board requesting a member to work on a development agreement for 42 Summer Street. And that same developer is also working on a project at 115 Main Street. And we're requesting a board member to participate on that working group.
Are they gonna be, meeting separately?
Separate.
They are, yes.
doing it separately. He agreed to that.
Yeah. His arm was twisted a little bit, but he agreed.
I don't mind serving on it again if you.
No, it's, I mean, unless anyone has any objection, Armin's has been on the first, so. Does anyone object? So I'll make a motion to nominate Armin Diabakarian as a member of the Development Working Group for 115 Main Street.
Second.
Any questions, comments?
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you, yeah.
Armin. We appreciate it.
And
And get this project.
Megan's doing a good job.
all those in favor? Thank you. Fire station sign quotes and images.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman. So, the fire station sign, if you're looking north at the fire station at the intersection, right in front of the flagpole is a sign that the town uses for information purposes, as well as just saying "Welcome to Maynard." But it's not the greatest sign, and it doesn't. As y'all have brought up, as the board has brought up in the past, the letters aren't staying on right, and it's not great. So the direction I've given.
It's not a good image.
It is not, and I agree with that. And so my direction I've given to the Office of Municipal Services, who's responsible for posting those, so really Megan's job, is to say, if it's fallen over, take it down. Like I'd rather no words up there than it looks sloppy. Yeah, correct. But it is helpful to have a message up there. So the residents and the visitors to the town, they get the information about town goings on in various ways, and one of those is by sitting at that light and then they read what's going on in town. So it is important to have that another approach, that other method of information, but it doesn't have to be that sign. So one consideration could be to replace that sign, but there's a cost to that. So I'm trying to remember who found this. The Office of Municipal Services, I know I'm speaking for Megan because she's the director of Office of Municipal Services. They found this one particular quote. And it's for two different sign types. And it's nice. There's a couple of other considerations for that particular area. Is that one, we are trying to get a new fire station. So if and when we're able to build a new fire station and move the fire department, the question would be whether the town retains that land. If the town doesn't, would we keep the sign? We could impose an easement for that sign. It's a good location. It's a well-trafficked intersection, or we wouldn't. And if we didn't, would we move the sign? There's a couple of questions to consider. I was looking for the board's direction as to what the direction the board would like the town administrator's office to take.
One comment, while I certainly believe that we should update or in somehow improve that sign, something to be aware of is whether or not the sign that's proposed here, it fits our bylaws.
Oh, sure.
And I think that's Rick's decision at the end of the day, but if it's an LED light that changes signs, I don't believe it's permitted.
Okay.
I actually just say I'm super old school, and the minute I saw the digital, I didn't like the digital part. I like the old school letters.
I without a doubt, we need to replace it. And I also think that part of the long-term vision should be not only signage and whatever, that whole intersection could be looked at if we could get, the state involved in some way.
Yeah.
Reconfiguring that intersection so that it looks better and it becomes more of a welcoming location.
So it is on the complete streets plan.
Say, isn't that the thing that we're working
So, yep, so in the complete streets plan, there is, it's not significant improvements, but it is improving mostly for the pedestrian use of that intersection.
On the complete streets thing.
Yeah, that's
Yes.
correct.
Yeah.
So it's not like a massive it's not a significant, we wouldn't be moving to a rotary or anything like that, but I think it is, I think that what the plan from the complete streets proposal is I think you'll like it. I think it'll really be that much more like welcoming of intersection. But that's a good point. I think that the intersection itself will there's going to be a lot of change if and when we build a new fire station and we move the fire department. Do we need to keep that land? And if we don't, how could that land be reused? The department itself, like the building itself, or if we sell the land? These are like the bigger questions that have to be addressed later. But yeah, we as I've said, and I know some of the board would agree to this because they also say like the McDonald's across the street has the best landscaping in town right there. And so like I'm grateful to them that at least that looks nice.
Put the sign there.
Yeah, well, no, so I would love the rest of the intersection
Gas station
improved.
for hundreds of years, so it's.
What, right there?
Right.
Oh,
where
Jarmo's?
Right where McDonald's was.
Oh, sorry, that was a gas
This
station.
is still left over on the left side.
That's
Yeah,
true.
yeah.
And the tenement houses.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah, and the tenement houses across the way from that.
Oh, wow.
So going back to the signages, to Justine's point, if it's not electronic, obviously electronic, based on what David is saying, it may not, we're not.
It may be valid if it doesn't change, but if you have a sign that does the roll up and, and spins around and all that stuff that some towns have, it may not, and even if it changes, I believe, if it changes like from time to a message, that's not valid under our bylaws. And think about it, do we then, if we do, and if that becomes the whole discussion for the planning board and for town meeting,
Sure.
because then do we want to introduce that to Maynard to have that become part of our environment?
Sure.
That would be a town meeting discussion.
the question I had was, of course, how would we pay for it?
Okay, so that's also a good question. I have not. So I could propose recommendations on how to fund these things, but I was just waiting for direction from the board. So if the board tells me, "Yep, we don't like it, demolish it, Greg," and then or come back with a plan on how to pay for that demolishment and what the cost, I'll do that. But I just was looking for direction from what the board would like me to do. Maintain the status quo of if it's not falling over, keep it, or don't put any wording up there. If you don't want any wording up there, what would the board like?
Can we figure out what our bylaws allow and then revisit the discussion, maybe?
Sure.
I don't know, that'd be my thought.
Yes?
Well, another option would be to, temporarily see if there's, right now, all it is a structure that, we used to have a similar one out in front of Town Hall before we put up the
Yes,
brick
we
one.
still do.
Yeah, but the brick, now it's much better with the brick. Now, it was a similar sign that we have at the fire station.
Okay.
Perhaps as a Boy Scout who's working on a whatever they call their project, not gold.
Yes,
Eagle Scout.
Eagle Scout project that could build a new one for us that would be better than what we've got. Now it's temporary, but it's still a project that might qualify for somebody. There might be other ways to get this achieved and get a better sign than what we've
Well,
got.
my question was, do we want a sign that's gonna have a message, or do we want a sign that just says, well?
Who maintains that sign?
Say that again?
OMS does. Who maintains the sign?
Yeah.
Specifically, it's Barbara. So Barbara Johnston drives down there. She puts the new words up there.
At one time, it was the fire
was gonna say,
department, and
wasn't
then
it the fire
they
chief secretary?
blocked. There was an issue.
Well, but
That's a
Barbara does the best job she can, and but again, it's so, yeah. So I think that's all I'm looking for, Mr. Chairman, is if you would like to pursue the estimated cost of demolishment, and I could do that. But, or if you'd like me to kind of get a robust plan for replacement.
Pursue all the options available.
Great.
And that's one of them.
Great. Okay.
I don't know what the, obviously it would need, it needs to be updated, modernized, but what's the problem with the inside of the sign now that the letters fall off and they get crooked after 20 minutes? There's gotta be a cause for that.
Yeah, I'm not.
Why are we
The
even,
salt
why are we
water.
putting the letters in like this?
No, I don't. I've not seen. Have you seen it?
The sign?
Have you actually been down there, opened it, and took a look
I
at it?
haven't opened it, no.
I
Yeah.
used, when it was new, I used to be the sign keeper.
You've seen it?
I've put signs up there before, so
Okay.
it's plastic stripping in there, and so the way the procedure used to be is any community member can actually put up anything, so, you would go in, there's a clipboard inside the fire department that you just put your name on and the date of the message and the date that it should be taken down, and it's your responsibility to go in. They give you kind of a file folder that has all the letters and numbers in it, and they're sort of organized. And you go out there and you lift it up, and that's actually broken, or it was, it might have been fixed since then, still broken. And there's plastic stripping in there, I think there's like 3 or 4, and you have to kind of organize the letters within that space. And so what's happening is the plastic stripping is falling away, and it's not attached.
Yeah,
It
if
hasn't
you're
been
currently
played for a
using
while.
tape, I mean,
Oh.
I think it's weathered.
Yeah.
Right.
So there could be a way to fix that internal piece. I mean, one of the adjustments that's been made is that Welcome to Maynard is like a standard thing, which is actually a really good idea, because every single time you used to have to then replace it with Welcome to Maynard again. And now you can just put that sign up, which is a much better option. But it's actually a really valuable resource to, community members in town to have that space to kind of advertise different events like the downtown sip and stroll and the opening of the farmer's market and children's events that are happening. It's a very central place that people look at.
Town meeting, and they advertise
All
the
those things.
voting,
Yeah,
the
that's-
voting things and everything else. It's all very valuable information.
So
That's
it
why,
could
Without a
be,
doubt.
your idea about having a troop, a Girl Scout or a Boy Scout person take that on is actually a good one, because people have mixed up a variety of things in town that way. And again, you could probably just replace the internal structure of that. It's the external piece that you have to look at to see how stable that still is, because
Yeah.
as you mentioned, the one out here was falling apart, so they replaced it with the brick piece.
Yep.
And there's a different procedure for doing that one than there is
Yeah.
for the fire station
Yep.
one.
it's just a central point where people go to look for information. To take
agree.
it down without having something replace it immediately
Oh, I agree.
doesn't make too much sense.
Okay, so I can continue. I'll continue to develop it, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
Next up. Reserve fund transfer time.
That's right, Mr. Chairman. Following the appropriation approved by town meeting, to use free cash allocation for reserve fund transfer, specifically for the remediation of the Green Meadow School. We have Michelle Resendez here, school business manager for the school department, and we have representative from the school committee, Mara Hogan, as well. So, per the procedures of the reserve fund transfer, and particularly because of this topic and going through town meeting for this particular purpose,
Yeah.
it's appropriate to bring it to the selectmen's attention before submitting it to the finance committee. So Michelle, you want to explain what the board is looking at? It's a copy of the reserve fund transfer request as well as all the bills.
Has somebody looked at it already? I mean, so we're, just,
Oh, good to go. Do you have any questions for Michelle?
I don't, I just, I think it's just, just appropriate to give us the total and, a brief description of that's in writing here. And then, that's all we really need. We know what's coming. We have copies here.
Yeah, and the reserve fund transfer process doesn't allow the Board of Selectmen to block it anyway, so we wouldn't be able to argue that point. We put our trust in the Finance Committee. Ken's here, and I know that Ken will lead the Finance Committee to ask the appropriate questions about the various line items that might be there. I think there's, I've watched some of the meetings that were televised, and I know that there's some concern about watching what is actually being approved versus what was presented and what the intent was at the outset. So I'm confident that that will happen. So I think the fact that we are being informed that it's going forward is fine, and that's my thoughts.
Thank you.
Yeah, I agree. It's a more of a procedural thing at this point, because we've already approved, of the warrant article.
That's right.
And supported it in that way, and so if you guys just want to give us a brief description of what these bills are for, and we'll just go through it.
So basically, this is the first set of invoices for the Green Meadow repairs that were listed on our construction schedule that we presented to FinCom a couple of, I think it was the May 1st. So these invoices right here are this reserve fund transfer is of all the invoices that we have currently paid out of the system. They range from multiple things. It goes for the decontamination phase, the abatement phase, testing phase. There's a lot of supplies and materials that were lost during that phase. There's honestly, that's really the majority of what this is. There's some payroll for overtime, for help with the remediation and such, but as of right now, this is what we've paid. We have paid, since this has been put together, we have paid some other additional invoices, but very minimal, because we're on hold for a couple of decisions that need to be made. What we do plan on doing is, once we get the final decision and we see where they're going, we're going to put together another packet for a review. I don't think that, I know Ken had initially said we thought we would need 3 different phases. I think the next phase may be the majority of it all, or all that we're going to get completed in this year.
Well, that was gonna be my question.
Yeah.
So any outstanding invoices that you're expecting that's gonna, come in?
So the work that we would complete by June 30th, obviously some of those invoices might come in after the fact, but we would have them encumbered and notified about it. But any work that cannot be completed by June 30th wouldn't actually fall, as I believe, into that 610. So we are trying to get everything done by the June 30th deadline, which is coming extremely quick. So we're hoping some decisions are made, hopefully on Thursday, as soon as possible, so that we can move forward.
One issue that I do want to bring up, and this is really speaking as a resident versus as a member of the board, so maybe I should go to this microphone, but I know that there's an invoice in there for a web page. And I know that the Finance Committee has had this discussion. I think the Finance Committee should have another discussion on it, because I don't believe that the web page is within the intent of fixing remediation for the Green Meadow School.
It does.
You can argue it with them.
Yep.
And I may attend the meeting and express my thoughts. I don't know if I'll have the opportunity. But I do not believe personally that it all fits within the constraints. And I think that that's something that the school budget should incur as an expense, because it's outside of the repairs, from my opinion, outside of the repairs and remediation. It might be public knowledge and information and everything else, but we owe a responsibility to the residents and to the taxpayer, and I don't think they bought into a webpage. That's my thought.
Does anyone else have any other questions or comments for the,
The one other thing I would say is, the school committee's added another meeting, I think on the 20th, which then would allow you all to see the last batch on July 2nd, still allowing us then to vote on that before the July 15th deadline. It's more probable that the next batch will come through in that timeline. I'm going to be visiting with school committee on Thursday evening to get an update on that, because we're going to obviously be meeting with them next,
The 10th.
next Monday.
Yeah.
I appreciate your work on this, it's obviously very
Yes.
extensive.
Thank you.
so there's a motion. The motion is to accept reserve fund transfer request submitted in the amount of $384,942.16, submitted by the school committee, school department, for activities related to the remediation of Green Meadow School. Do you have a second?
Second?
Any further conversation? All those in favor? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Michelle?
Thank you. Have a nice night.
Oh, Mara, thank you too. Yeah, well, Mara comes. Michelle, we never get to see Michelle.
Hey.
Never comes to see us.
I'm
She'll be back
tired.
once more. Once more, she'll be back. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you both.
Thank you, Michelle.
Yeah, we really have to discuss a special town meeting?
Yeah.
Is there anything on it yet?
Not yet. But that, so Mr. Chairman.
I see this list.
That's right. So, Mr. Chairman, it's important to our office to have, if there's any sort of like objections to our proposed timeline, to know that now, because we do like to stay on top of the different submissions for the proposed special town meeting in the fall. I'm proposing a date of November 18th. I'll say that clearly, November 18th, for a special town meeting, and you can see some of the potentially proposed topics: fire station, Coolidge School, budget adjustments, and then those 4 withdrawn articles from the annual town meeting, and any other articles that may arise.
What about those warrants that we have to remove?
That's what he just said.
You did?
Yes.
Wasn't paying attention.
I called them withdrawn articles. But the point is, it is helpful to have a special town meeting lined up for those items. But you have to backdate it, right? So the timeline shows that I would like to have those articles in hand by Friday, September 13th. By the way, I'm giving credit to Ms. Mosca here for drafting this timeline, but it sort of meets it meets our needs. We need to be able to review it. I want the selectmen to review it, to have the time. One of the lessons learned in preparation for the annual town meeting is to allow enough time for the board to really assess before they give their endorsement to go on there. I just want to make sure we abide by that, and we need time to do that. Those parties that are responsible for those proposed articles, they understand this is, they've known for a while that it could be October, November. November 18th seems to be the latest we could do for a fall town meeting, and so they should be prepared. But I look forward to hearing, their proposals soon.
Okay.
So you don't need a vote from us,
I don't think I do, unless you think otherwise, Ms. Mosca.
unless we're setting a date. I don't think we need to, and we're not setting
No.
a date, right?
We're just discussing a date.
He's just recommending the days. But then eventually we have to.
We will,
David's
we
Yeah.
will have.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And the longer we push it
I
out,
was gonna say.
the shorter the time gets for the window.
Should think about.
So maybe put that on the next,
I don't,
Mr. Chair.
no, I don't have a problem with doing it. at the
Unless
next
you would-
meeting, as soon as possible.
would you like to, I didn't know if you would like to do it in a motion, Mr. Chairman, you may, but you don't have to. We can do it next meeting.
You can do it at the next meeting, have a motion in there appropriately, and
Very good.
Set the
the
date.
way we typically do it, and set the date and
Very good.
everything else. It's okay with me to do it that way, or,
Yeah.
it gives us, we only have to give 45 days, right? So we're gonna give almost
A lot.
5 months. I think we covered.
That's true, but it will go quick. I mean, like, those bodies have a good amount of work to
We'll do it
do.
at the next meeting, so it's gonna go quick.
No,
That
I meant
way.
that like I've been working with the Coolidge School Reuse Committee, for example. You know, they got some work to do to make sure it's ready to go.
Yeah.
I'm fine with that.
Yep.
We have to schedule too, we have to, is that on our, is that on the schedule that we're gonna discuss in a couple of minutes, the, priority meeting?
Is that scheduled?
No, it's not
That's not on
scheduled
our
yet.
dates, the scheduled dates.
That's
Oh,
the
no.
To have another one.
2020, we have to have another one for this year.
Yes, we do.
That won't be until September.
Well, it was
No, we
supposed to
should
be,
have it early.
it was supposed to be, it was supposed to be early August, but we kept pushing it back.
That's true.
I think they're waiting for the election.
We should go back to
Should go back to
early
having
August.
it, yeah, that's true.
I think just because that's typically when it was.
Okay.
The last couple of years, it's been pushed back for various.
I'll take some blame. I was hired and then I had a baby and then I went
Yeah,
on
no,
vacation.
see-
Well, it's the fiscal year too,
I
and
don't-
if we're halfway through the fiscal year when we set our goals,
I don't think you need to blame yourself. The 5 of us were gonna. But, you know, move on. So,
So when do you wanna set the date?
well, we're gonna do that in a few minutes.
Oh.
I'm gonna get, that's one more
After
agenda item.
priorities.
Gotcha.
So the
Goals.
fall town meeting, we're gonna vote to set that date, November 18th, at our next meeting.
No problem.
And then now with the, board priorities for 18 and 19 FYs, you wanna touch on those, where we're at, and
Mr. So I can speak to that, Mr. Selectman. So as the board was just discussing, the FY19 priorities were, the board deliberated at the golf course in October. And it was done as priorities, and let me explain that. So my understanding was that had been done in the year past, so I provided that document in the board docs. But if the board would like to move towards goal settings, that's great. And so we can either do that through a facilitated discussion that I can lead, we can have an outside moderator, or the board can direct it themselves. I just want to make sure I meet the request of the board.
I think,
I'm in favor of goal settings.
no, yeah, the way we've done it in the past is okay, and it's changed. It was a, several years ago, it was a goals-oriented
Sure.
thing rather than priority-oriented, something to check off, what's our progress? And I think, and it was, under prior administrations, it kind of just became just something we, had dinner, talked about a bunch of
Yeah.
things, got a piece of paper and, put it up on the screen every 6 months. But I'd like to see goals,
Yeah.
some goals, especially with,
Prioritize those goals, I mean, it's all gotta.
well, you're talking about there's a lot of different things going on too that require us to have
Correct.
some goals, not just the sign, but things like the sign that we just discussed and other things, address certain issues that certain people have on this board.
I agree.
And certain things that we have on our, list of things, a goal is to, what's a goal, set the marijuana rules and application by a certain date, put dates on, it, do things
Yeah.
by a certain.
You could get to that level of detail, yes.
Well, I think
Or
we need to get to that level of detail, so we have
yeah.
an annual agenda as
Right, very
opposed to
good.
just a bi-weekly agenda.
very
It's
good.
like an accountability structure.
Exactly.
If you'd like, Trey.
Oh, yeah.
And it's not for you, I think I'm not anticipating
It's
it's
for
for
us.
you, it's for us.
Okay.
Because I think that what I found in this year is that, the year went by,
Yeah.
I mean.
Well, to
So
your point,
there's-
Justine, you're looking at these priorities, and I'm saying, well, how many of these did we accomplish?
Well, that's exactly it.
So we're looking at it, I'm saying, okay, well, I don't see anything here that, in my opinion, that's been accomplished.
I think we're working
We're
toward,
working
but,
towards it,
but
but we have
exactly, I
to
feel
ver-
the same way.
I think
It's work in progress.
Well, I think part of the discussion that goes into this also, that has been missing, is long-term goals and
Yes.
planning.
Sure.
Not just short-term, not just for the fiscal year, but long-term, so we can talk about issues like, a senior center, and how are we going to plan for that, and where do we want to put that in? And that's why,
That's where
as
your
the
capital
meeting
planning
sort of,
would come in.
exactly, that's where I was going. That's why the meeting sort of goes full circle, because the capital planning aspect of this is important too. So I think we can expand, we can broaden how we approach it, with the focus being on goals, short-term, goals long-term. And then we begin to prioritize from there. I don't know, it's,
I agree. Looking at last year's priorities, economic development, communication, staffing, and administration, really? Like, those aren't, that's.
Because it was an,
That's
well,
just a
they're
waste.
not
That was-
they're not, concrete, what's the word?
Smart,
It's not smart. That's,
So anyway,
that's an acronym for,
they're not smart goals,
Specific,
cannot
measurable,
measure goals,
attainable,
right.
time, yes.
yeah, so
Realistic,
anyway,
time bound.
so we should have just something different than,
I agree.
You can put economic development, communication, and staffing up there as 11, 12, and 13.
yeah.
But
Yeah.
they're really not,
Oh, very
they're
good.
an issue. Communication is always an issue in every business. In every business, every home, everything. Communication is never gonna be perfect, but it's something to work on.
And by the way, to
But
Natasha's point, we should.
the rest of it is the same.
Smart goals.
I fully agree. So,
All right,
so, Mr. Chairman, I encourage the board to provide, if you can, put a little thought into it, come to whenever the meeting is scheduled with some goals in mind, and then that way we can throw them up there, and then you give them to me or Becky, and then we'll have them, and Megan, to have them ahead of time, and then everyone can say, yep, I like that one or not, or whatever.
Be nice to have them ahead of time.
Very good. That's all I'm saying.
No, it would be. I mean, it would be nice to
Yeah.
have them ahead of time, so
Yes.
we're an hour into it before we do anything other than write on the, write them down and
exactly.
start breaking them down.
Yeah. But I also, can I just take this time, Mr. Chairman? I do want to commend the board. Even though you may think like it's hard to say we have tangible proof of accomplishment of these priorities, I would disagree. I think that this board has, in the short term that I've been here, has shown a certain amount of civil discourse and has allowed for that civil discourse, whether it be in regards to the Patternville Place. We got a lot of community input from that, and I thought it was done like cooperatively and effectively, which also speaks to the support increased public participation. We've supported economic development committee initiatives. I don't want to, all I'm saying is, I would feel good if I was at the board.
You notice what he's doing, he's reviewing.
You're right. I heard that I'm getting interviewed next time. No, I'm just saying that if I look at this, I could speak to accomplishments. That's all I'm
I don't know
saying.
where this came from.
It's yours.
Where'd it come from?
It's supersized.
It's,
Yeah, I like that.
It's heavy.
I don't know, where was that like months ago?
Glad my wife isn't sitting up here.
You were gonna use the gavel on me for complimenting the board.
Well, I was gonna
Good,
put-
I'm
I was
not
gonna
doing it anymore.
put-
Never
I was
mind.
gonna put-
Never
push it
mind.
up to the excess of.
Okay.
All right, so when are we setting the date for the?
In this next agenda item.
Next
Oh,
agenda.
sorry.
All right, so we'll do that.
Yeah.
We can talk about that between now and then too,
All right,
a
very
little
good.
bit. We'll kind of talk about the goals meeting, maybe 2 meetings before it. Like a meeting or two before it, which will be 2 in July.
Okay.
And then just, set one of those to just have a 15, 20-minute conversation about that and, what do we envision happening that night,
Okay.
make sure we're on the same page.
pre-discussion.
Yeah, just,
Okay, so that's moving into the next topic, Mr. Chairman. So what you would like is the goal setting to be at the end of August?
well,
That was the
we're gonna
beginning of
open that spreadsheet right now and see what
Okay.
happens.
Oh, you mean for the calendar?
Yes,
Yeah.
Ah,
you've been waiting on the edge of your seat for it, so we're gonna get to it. We're ready. I'm okay with that.
I am away the 18th to the 24th.
What month?
18th or what?
Hey, come with me, that's when I'm on vacation.
Cool.
I'm waiting the second 2 weeks.
Make sure you bring your golf clubs.
There's gonna be no room on the boat,
I could go on a boat.
anyway.
Yes.
Yeah, so if you're away the week of August 20th, that's only there'll be 2 of us at least away. We can-
I'm on vacation. I'm not gonna be away, but I'm bringing
Right,
my daughter
right.
to
Headed to
school.
college.
Right,
Yeah.
so I think, why don't we just take this draft
Okay.
and everybody look at the dates, and any dates that don't
Yes.
match up with your personal schedules, we'll adjust. And then, if everybody could take a look, maybe August 6th, we've typically had the goal-setting meeting the week of a regular meeting, like double up, or we could do it
The Thursday of that week.
the Thursday of that week, yeah?
That week, that
Right.
eighth.
So Thursday the 8th, if that's okay. That's just a temporary for now, just kind of, and then, add it to the schedule and see if it fits for everybody.
Did you say Thursday, August 8th?
Thursday, August 8th,
All
yeah?
right, very good.
What time will we start?
We usually start whenever we want.
Okay, I mean, I'm flexible, I just wanted to put it in
Like six, I mean, we usually start a little earlier because we
Yeah,
don't eat, so
Yeah,
six
We'll,
or
we'll
so?
send some food to keep you
Six is fine.
thinking.
6?
o'clock.
Well, last year that caused a problem.
Oh,
Who got mad at Vic and Matt, right? Well, that's,
He bring his flowers.
you get mad because we were eating.
it was the receipt.
That's right. He's not coming this year.
Okay.
Anyways.
Well,
It worked out. It worked out well.
so yes,
It was
Mr. Chairman.
posted we met all the qualifications and we met all the regulations. We posted the meeting. It was a public meeting, it was open. The
Yes.
doors weren't closed.
Yes.
So we met all the requirements that were
No, he
required
wasn't
to meet.
complaining about that. He was complaining about how uncomfortable it was that we were sitting there eating and he was, that was the issue.
Yeah, he didn't ask me for any fries.
So, Mr. Chairman, we'll put this on the next agenda.
All right, thanks,
Okay.
sir.
Perfect.
How about the town administrator reports of beauty this month?
Yeah.
I feel like that was sarcasm, Mr. Chairman,
I'm gonna
but
start printing in color.
we've been putting them on the website, so you can do
No,
that.
but,
I print them all the time.
no,
I can't take credit for any of this, really. I wrote the 3 bullets, I reviewed the rest of it, but my staff puts a lot of work into this. So again, I always commend them, but again, I do appreciate that they work to put into this to keep the board informed. Do you have any questions?
No,
for the town administrator?
I like it.
Yeah.
No, it's nice. It's a good one, it's a good one.
Mhm.
I think it's great because it does tell, it says a little bit of everything about the
You-
town.
Just so you know, we had almost as many dog licenses as we did voters.
That's, yeah,
Exactly.
it's 14.5%.
Out of
I
7,800
don't know if that's decent or not, but.
voters.
Sad, but it is.
For the town election, right?
Used to be.
Used to be.
No, used
So,
Like 5%.
do you have anything to add to it?
Do I, Mr. Chairman?
obviously
Yeah.
it's true, because we have more registered dogs than we have registered.
Hold on, I'm having a brain, hold on.
Well, we can come back to you.
Can you remind me what the topic was, Mr. Chairman? I
No,
apologize.
we'll get to the
Town
topic, we'll get to the
administrator report.
topic
Do
in a
you have anything
minute.
to add to your town administrator?
Alright.
We'll get to the topic in a minute.
All right, very good.
You have some, if you remember, if I don't touch on it.
I think I know what you're referring to.
Yeah.
Okay, yes, I can speak to it now,
So-
Mr. Chairman.
Okay, we can get to the end.
Okay,
I'll ask. But anyway,
all right, very good.
so, the TA review, is everyone okay with that for July 2nd?
Sure.
So you've got, okay.
You're finished with
That was just, yeah.
I'm done with it.
Sorry you did it already. So July 2nd, we'll do them and then we'll compile them and get to them.
So you
Either-
want them to, in your hands
Yeah,
July
to
2nd?
us, yeah, right,
Oh,
right.
so we're not actually doing anything on
No,
July
no,
2nd?
you,
we're just
so
getting to it.
get them to me by the 2nd, then
Okay.
I'll put them all together and, print
Okay.
out what everything comes up to be and print the comments and put it all in one document and then share it with everybody.
Now,
and-
again, talking historically, what has been done for members of the board, what has been done, it's not mandatory, but there was always the opportunity and the encouragement of members of the board to meet personally, directly with the town administrator in order to review how we have evaluated that individual ourselves and explain some of the concerns or positives or whatever that we may have personally, because we never really have that opportunity to sit down as a board to talk about it. That's not done. So I would encourage everyone, and I hope Greg will welcome the opportunity to meet with me, to talk about all the positives that,
It's gonna be on one page.
that, just so you have an understanding of where my evaluation comes in.
I would appreciate that.
I think it's only fair.
Very good.
So, Craig touched on it in his report, but we did have the parade for Memorial Day, hosted by the folks at the VFW.
No, American Legion.
American Legion, yeah, so,
American Legion.
American Legion, and then those who were there were fortunate to hear David's speech, which
Very nice.
was as good as all the other Memorial Day speeches.
You read it online.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And then congratulations to the high school graduating seniors and good luck with the weather for Friday. And the last one was the one that you were gonna allude to, which was kind of the missing.
Oh, very good.
Missing forms from the town clerk's office.
I can explain that, Mr. Chairman, yes.
Yeah.
So, in a recent Beacon Villager edition, it listed, as it often does, the some excerpts of the police log for the town of Maynard. One of those included a report of missing files. I'm not getting this exactly right, but something like missing files from town hall. As a little bit of, but not getting into too much level of detail, because I do believe that this is town administrator's responsibility to handle this as a day-to-day task, but for the board's acknowledgement and for the public awareness, it was files that were missing from the town clerk's office. The town clerk went to the police department to request their assistance to see if there was any evidence of those files. Their town hall's under surveillance, so she wanted to just check if any of the surveillance tapes have it. The police didn't have tapes that showed anyone walking out with these particular files. Those files included some voter registration cards. There's not specifically, I don't know, it depends on what you believe as to what level of personal identification material is on those voter registration cards. It only includes the last 4 digits of social security number, for example. But myself and my police chief conducted a sort of like unofficial investigation. So, and there was corrective actions addressed to the town clerk's office. I believe that she will abide by those corrective actions, and I am managing it.
Are we certain that they were taken and not just
No.
misplaced?
We are not.
Do we know
Why would anybody want that?
Well, if you
Good
can
question.
get names with,
Oh, Social Security?
with identification
But there's no Social
information on it.
So the last 4 digits of social security. I do not believe that they were valuable to the point where they would be theft. Besides, it is locked. Like you have to, in order to get to that level, you have to go through, you have to have the key fob. So not anyone, we have a certain awareness of who is coming in and out of that area of town hall. And we've done some, like I said, it's not been an official investigation. The police didn't feel like that was warranted. I considered an investigation on my behalf, my responsibility, which I've done. So I am, right, we are addressing it.
So is there any way to know which voter registration files are misplaced? Or are
That's a good
missing?
question. I am not sure, but I can ask. Yep. So just as a little bit of clarification. So when someone changes their address or whatever the case is, and they submit the card, the physical card, it has to be inputted into the database and whatnot, and then that card will be filed. Like it'll be organized, and they put it in the filing thing. But the clerks may have someone else at the window, so they don't have time to put that in right away. And by clerks, I mean it's two people. So then they might put them in the little basket, and that's what I'm referring to. And that basket was just there, and then when they have time, then they file it away. And that basket wasn't there one day when they thought it was supposed to be there. So it depends on what you. I asked the whole the We're working through that procedure and sort of document control and whatnot. Again, I could go into level of detail, but I don't think the board needs to know that level of detail of what the internal workings of the town administrator's office. But I can provide it if you would like.
So it was a basket case.
Nice.
We were waiting for that.
It could have fallen into a trash bucket.
So we investigated that too. We asked the custodial, and I have asked the town clerks to come up with procedures written down for the custodials to follow to make sure they don't do that in the future. It's just standard paperwork stuff. We're just trying to make sure that doesn't happen again.
Thanks.
There you go,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Chairman.
Thank you.
So by the way, just a quick update, and what's going on with the search for DPW?
Oh yeah, so we have 17 or 18 applications right now. So my office will do like a quick, just first round, just to make sure if there's anybody on totally left field that doesn't have any place in applying. Those happen. But I didn't have it set yet, and I know I've been teasing y'all for a while, but like I want to have a set sort of recommendation as to move forward. It would be similar to what we did for the town administrator. So for the assistant town administrator. So my recommendation would be, of course, this is up to the board as the appointing authority. But I would recommend doing like a first round interview, having a second round interview, and with a certain amount of expertise on each, and then have a candidate or two provide to the board.
And then in regards to facilities manager, what's going on?
So that's true. So I'm not prepared yet to sort of announce the plans for facilities manager. I'm sorry, I do want to. I'm excited to share with you, but I have to work out some stuff with the various departments for facilities management. I know that's a lot of vagueness I just gave. I recognize that, but I'm just not prepared. I don't have an official plan yet to prepare for public.
Can you go back just one
Yes.
piece of information, just for the public's sake, on the missing files?
Very good.
Should anybody be concerned that if they had stepped in to register, that they are not registered to vote? In other words, that they did not get into the system, then so that at the next election they show up and it's like, oh, you're not registered, and then it becomes an issue where they can't vote. I don't want to have people in that situation.
Absolutely. I can't speak to that now, but I will find out.
Okay.
Okay, board reports. Melissa?
I went to the Viva Love Yoga ribbon cutting for their 1 year this weekend, which is fabulous. And downtown was bustling on Saturday, which was really good to see. That's all I have.
Bustling.
Yeah.
Okay. Armin?
I don't have much, but I do have to say, from one standpoint, and that Will Doyle came up in one of my. I went to the West Acton comic show on Friday night, and ironically, the production that does that there made the announcement at the microphone that he's going to be doing it at the Sanctuary. Also, he's bringing the comedy show to the Sanctuary in September, so it's good to hear.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, it's good to hear that that place is going to start.
Was he funny?
There was like 5 comedians, so.
Well, that wasn't the
they're all
question.
funny.
Was he funny?
They're all funny.
All right.
I'm still laughing. So anyway, but
That's where he got us material tonight.
Yeah. So it was just nice to hear that, that place is going to start hopping. It's going to be a good destination for some performing arts.
Yeah.
That was it.
Okay. So, yeah.
Yeah, I want to echo what you said earlier, congratulating the Maynard High School class of 2019, who will graduate on Friday. Good for them. They have achieved something that they should be proud of. Last meeting, you may recall, I talked about the possibility of having something done over at the police station with a drop-off or online sales or whatever. I did speak to the chief. He took the information. He's going to explore it. Did not send me out the door, so that was a good thing. I wasn't arrested when I was in his office. So anyway, he's going to look into it and see if it's something that they can take a little bit further. We do, though, he did make the point, and we knew this anyway, that he does allow people, if they do want to find a safe place to exchange money or whatever goods that they're selling online, that the Maynard Police Station is available for that possibility. So the proposal would just formalize it into an actual space that become known as an exchange location. But anyway, so at least he's looking into it. That's it.
Your turn.
That's the
Come on.
Miss Justine?
All right.
Well, I know your daughter's waiting patiently to hear what you have to say.
That's exactly it.
You gonna tell us what Zach's doing?
They are having quite the trip. So Maynard High School, there are 12 juniors that are over in London right now. They've been in London since Sunday morning. They tomorrow head to Normandy, and they will be participating in the ceremonies for the 75th anniversary of D-Day. They've spent this past week visiting, the Royal Air Force Museum, the Churchill War Room, the London Eye. They've really packed a lot in. I appreciate everything that the chaperones are doing. They've really packed this trip. So it truly is a trip of a lifetime for all of them. So I can't wait to hear when they come back. So they're doing a great job. Other thing I have, which is kind of on that, is actually 3 of us participated in a meeting for the Hometown Heroes program last week. For a program where you put banners on poles honoring veterans. This is still a kind of a loose working group, but it sounds like we're getting closer to having a more cohesive group. Our plan is to have this project launched for Memorial Day of 2020 in conjunction with the sesquicentennial. So we do have people stepping up. If anyone's interested in volunteering, learning more, our next meeting is going to be on Thursday, June 13th at the library. I'm hoping that we'll actually have the person from Bolton who organized their program there. And I heard from her today, and she's just sent us a lot of good information, so we really kind of get off the ground with that. So we're doing that. Today I had a meeting with both members of the school committee and Dr. Girardi and Greg regarding just the school town MOU for the facilities position and also our next steps moving forward. So it was an initial conversation. I think that we're pretty close to all being on the same page. I'm looking forward to hearing how, because it kind of, for us, from the town side, we kind of have to let the school do their part first. So, you know, once they present at the school committee meeting on Thursday, we'll have more of a cohesive plan moving forward to hopefully, you know, be ready to go for the fall, which would be amazing. So we have another meeting planned too. That wasn't our only standalone meeting. And finally, on Thursday, I think I'm going to be joining Megan, right? No.
In finance?
Yes.
Yes.
To the new official financial forum. Even though I'm not technically new official anymore, I am going to be talking about, you know, financial planning and things like that regarding that. So I think that's all. I know.
We should touch on, before we finish, the Hometown Heroes program. If there's 3 of us in the room at the same time for that type of discussion, we should post it.
Correct.
Or just have 2 of us be part of that group.
Correct.
That's perfectly fine.
Would you like to talk about that now, Mr. Chairman?
Well, just throwing it out there, yeah.
So my recommendation to the board is to designate just two people amongst the board to participate, to actively to participate, to attend these meetings. Otherwise, if you have 3 members of the board, that's a quorum, and then it should be posted per open meeting law. So that's all. It's up to you.
Was that verified even if it's not related to public funds?
That's my understanding is to be at least on the safe side. You should abide by open meeting law. You are giving your opinion, and you are giving a certain amount. Even just your presence alone implies an endorsement of the town towards whatever's being decided. My recommendation would be to stay safe about it. So Mr. Chairman, are there 2 members of the board that would be willing to continue such active participation?
I can't go June 13th, but yeah, you know, I'm interested, but.
I'll back away.
No,
That's fine.
I have no
No,
problem
that's
backing
fine.
away.
That's perfectly fine.
Okay.
I don't want to have to get into posting meetings.
Very good.
No, but that's, so I think one of it, I mean.
You could take a note, so.
Why can't you alternate?
You could. That's
true.
fair. It is not an official town group, so there's no appointments. I just say,
As long as just
Yeah.
2, you could alternate.
Yeah, it's not.
Not that easy, though.
Just coordinate,
Oh,
but
okay.
I mean for June 13th, David and Justine can go, because Chris can't make it.
I don't want to make it. It should not become a big issue. It's supposed to be a positive.
yeah,
Oh, absolutely.
yeah.
I
I'm
don't
not
wanna
trying
have
to. I
don't
don't.
want to have posts.
No,
Correct.
just posting
I'm
this.
trying not to make it serious. I have to say these things because.
No, I understand it. It's always a concern. I mean,
Right.
You know, when we're at anything and there's 3 of us
That's
standing
right.
in one spot, just saying hello. Did you guys
Yeah.
post?
No,
You
but
know,
sometimes it's
so-
information gathering. In this
Yeah.
case, you've been giving opinions,
Right.
so then you have to be careful.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm fine.
What
I'm
time
fine.
is it?
6:30, right? Yeah. 6:30.
Okay. Other than that, we good?
I'm
So-
good, Mr. Chairman. I'm sure there's 1,000 things we could discuss tonight, but it's getting late.
Yeah, it's actually
Yes.
kind of early. I could add. So make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor? The next meeting is June 18th.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Good job,
You gotta
Becky.
find
I think-
someone with a
I
lot
think
of
in
stick to
future-
play on.
I'll let you